Boldwood presents Happily Ever After at the Dog and Duck, written by Jill Steeples and read by Beth Lilly. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. The village green in Little Leyton was abuzz with activity on the afternoon of that sunny Sunday in August. It was the bank holiday weekend, the last hurrah of summer before the children returned to school, when the cooler, autumnal days would move in around us. Soon the mad descent into the Christmas preparations would begin, and, as much as I was enjoying this glorious weather, I felt a tingle of anticipation at the thought of the change in seasons. The run-up to Christmas was always my favourite time of year. For now, I was content sitting beneath the shade of the old oak tree with little Noel on my knee, sporting a navy and lemon two-piece with matching hat, and Digby, my Labrador, at my feet, watching as the world went by. The villagers were out in force today to support the summer fair, milling around the marquees, chatting to one another and visiting the cheerfully decorated stalls. At my feet was a wicker basket filled to the brim with a stash of goodies I'd collected on my way around the green. Some jams and chutneys, a couple of paperbacks from the mother and toddler bookstall, and 2 pretty little floral tea plates from St. Cuthbert's Church bric-a-brac stall. My gaze drifted across to the Dog and Duck pub, where the front door was wide open and a steady flow of people wandered in and out, no doubt on the way to the barn at the back, which we decorated with bunting and balloons. When I'd popped in earlier, the Pims and summer cocktails were proving to be very popular, and the walled beer garden, adorned with blooming hanging baskets from Polly's flowers next door, was packed with happy customers, taking a rest from the delights of the fair and soaking up the sun and booze instead. Just how I, as landlady of the inn, liked it. Since Noel's arrival 8 months ago, I'd stepped back from the day-to-day running of the pub, leaving it in the capable hands of my barman, Dan, his girlfriend, Silke, and, of course, Eric, who was the previous landlord and who was now living back at the pub. But I still couldn't stop myself from getting involved on special occasions like today. In the main arena, where we'd already seen a gymnastics display from the local club, the school choir performing songs from their end-of-term show, and the mother and toddler's fancy dress competition, which had brought forward a fetching array of sea creatures, a cacophony of barking broke out as the dog show got underway. "Look, Noel! Can you see Daddy and Flora?" I lifted him up for a better view and laughed as we watched Flora trying to go in every direction possible, blatantly ignoring any of Max's commands and getting her lead tangled around his legs, almost tripping him over, before becoming distracted by an extreme who was clearly determined to remain immune to her charms. Max was dressed in cargo shorts and a white short-sleeved shirt, which only served to highlight his tanned and muscular arms, and his face was set in an expression of determination. Well, he was nothing if not competitive, but, judging by some of the other dogs in the ring who were obviously much better trained than Flora, I really didn't reckon much to our chances. Thankfully, there were classes for waggiest tail, most appealing eyes, best OAP and best newcomer, although I didn't think anyone was really too concerned about winning any prizes. Certainly not the dogs, who were having too much fun together. Apart, that was, from Max. "Prettiest dame," he said, waving a rosette at me when it was all over and he came to find us. "Huh, she could have won any of those classes. Best newcomer was the one we wanted, wasn't it, Flora? But it went to Captain, that German shepherd. It doesn't matter, Max. It's the taking part that counts. You both did really well, and we know that Flora really is the best dog in the village." I covered up Digby's ears as I said the words. Max looked marginally appeased. Honestly, talk about rose-tinted glasses. He was in love. Truly, madly, deeply. With me, he assured me, but I suspected his head had been turned by the young English pointer, Flora, who we'd recently adopted from Spain. In fairness, I was pretty smitten too, with her big brown eyes and long gangly legs, She was funny and sweet, but she could be a little so-and-so when she wanted to be, and hadn't quite grasped where she was in the pecking order in the house, seemingly believing she was top dog. Our melded canine family of Max's 2 gun dogs, Holly and Bella, and my lovely Labrador, Digby, who'd been my faithful companion since I'd returned to the village, tolerated the little whippersnapper with remarkable sang-froid. "Max, I thought it was you. Oh, you and your dog were brilliant in that ring. I think you should have won Best in Show. How are you?" In a white gypsy skirt and matching broderie Anglaise off-the-shoulder top, showing off a long, slim neck and golden, toned arms, the woman spoke in a breathy whisper and looked a vision of summer loveliness. It was only when she lifted her big-rimmed sunglasses off her face and rested them on her head that I realised exactly who it was. "Hello, Darcy." She spun round to look down at me on the bench. "Ellie, hi. I didn't notice you there." That was hardly surprising, I mused, as I noted the disappointment. I nodded, forcing a smile. Darcy was an old work friend of Polly's and a huge fan of Max. I'd first met her when she'd turned up for Polly's hen do at the pub, and she'd made a beeline for him, throwing everything from her extensive range of seduction techniques at him. Thankfully, Max had been as resolutely immune to her charms as Captain had been to Flora's. Not that it had seemed to deter Darcy in any way. She'd told me exactly what she thought about my boyfriend, and had even suggested she would be happy to take him off my hands if I ever tired of him. As if that was really going to happen. When she realised I wasn't about to go anywhere, she'd cast her attentions on one of the young waiters who'd been specially hired for the event instead. It had all got a bit riotous out in the barn, with the champagne cocktails flowing all night long, the music stirring everyone's senses, and some impromptu and sultry dance moves going on, involving various items of clothing being discarded across the room. Messy didn't really cover it. The next day, Darcy, who'd been unable to get home the previous night as she'd been in such a sorry state, and so had stayed with us at the manor, had been contrite and apologetic for her behaviour, and all had been forgiven. Now, with her hand on Max's arm, I wondered if she'd come back especially to see if I had grown tired of Max after all. "How are you?" she asked, plonking herself down on the bench next to me. My nostrils twitched as I caught a whiff of her heady, exotic perfume. "I'm fine, thank you. Enjoying this lovely weather." "You look tired," she said, ignoring my comment and peering at me intently. "Are you sure you're all right?" Max glanced at me with concern in his eyes. It was funny. I'd been absolutely fine before Darcy had turned up. But suddenly I felt tired and jaded against her shining luminosity. I knew from before that she said things as she saw them, and I shouldn't let her off-the-cuff comments get to me, but her arrival had definitely ruffled me. "Yes, it's just what having babies does for you," I said lightly, bouncing Noel on my knee. "You won't have heard our news," said Max, putting an arm around my shoulder in an obvious show of togetherness. "Ellie and I are getting married." I gave him a sideways glance, thankful for the support. "Oh, really?" Darcy's features dropped for the slightest moment before she quickly plastered on a smile. "That's great news. Congratulations. When's the big day?" "We haven't confirmed the exact day yet, but hopefully very soon," said Max. "If it was me, I'd do it tomorrow." Darcy sighed heavily. "Why wait? I'd love to be getting married soon." Our news seemed to deflate. Polly had told me that she'd spent most of her 20s in a fruitless relationship with her married boss, and ever since she'd had a series of bad experiences with men. Darcy had admitted to me, that fateful morning after the night before, that she envied me and Polly, being settled and happy in our relationships. "Anyway," she said, shaking herself as if to put an end to her musing, "I wanted to say hello to Polly. Have you seen her?" "Yes, she was over by the shop with Sasha earlier. My best friend, Polly, owned the florist's, Polly's Flowers, next door to the pub. I'd noticed the pair of them, heads together, deep in conversation. I'd waved to them and they'd waved back, but I'd had the distinct impression they hadn't wanted me.